Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of How's That Day, a culture rundown with Tom and Phil. I'm Phil Wiedenhaft here to introduce you to my co-host, the one and only king of my world, Mr. Tom Bond. Are you there?
Hi. Yeah, I'm there. Hi. Hello.
I'm gonna just leave you dangling and see how long you go.
Hi. Oh, I can go forever like this.
Each week, Tom and I get together to chat about how our days have been going, and together we work through our thoughts on what's going on in pop culture and anything else we feel like talking about. I'm going to start this week with the same question I always ask. Tom, how's that day?
Phil, today's been good. I forget if I mentioned last week when we recorded that my foot has been acting up. Did I mention that?
You mentioned on a previous, I don't think it was last week, you mentioned on a previous podcast that you were walking around, and I saw some photos of you with a cane.
Yeah. So that must have been from the most recent episode, because it's been about a week and a half now, where my dang arthritis in my dang foot has been acting up bad. It's getting better, though.
God, you're old.
So that feels good. Yesterday I was able to walk around for the first time in like a week and a half, which felt nice. Besides that, what I do today, I met my writing partner, Sarah, for lunch.
What'd you eat?
I had a turkey panini. She actually had this really good almond-flavored ravioli. It was like made in an almond sauce.
Okay.
And it was really I'm sorry, not almond, a walnut sauce. And it was really good. So I had some of that. And then I went to go see Deadpool 2, which we're going to talk about later.
Cool.
And tomorrow is our first day mixing Mamma Mia 2 at work.
Here we go again.
So I can now say I have worked at that mixing place for a Tom Hanks movie, The Circle, and a Meryl Streep movie, Mamma Mia 2. So I've handled America's Parents. It makes me happy.
I believe that Mamma Mia, at least the first one, I don't know about the second one. The first one was produced by Mr. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson.
That is correct. Him and his producing partner, Gary, they are producing this one as well.
So this is technically a second time that you're working with the Hanks.
I guess that's true, yeah.
Cool. Well, that's exciting.
That's true. Although
you've never met him.
Will not meet him.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've never met Hanks, but, that's fine. You're on the crew.
He did produce The Circle as well, but as well as star in it, and I didn't get a chance to meet him.
Boo.
But that's okay.
Maybe someday when we're directing him in our movie.
You know who I'd love to meet from Mamma Mia 2?
Amanda
Seyfried.
I was right. Yeah,
my girl. She's my girl.
Yeah,
I love her.
I was gonna say you've had a crush on that girl for many a years.
Yep, and she's a Twin Peaks alum now.
Now she's legit. Now she's got that Lynch approval.
Oh, I saw another movie this week. Speaking of her,
oh yeah,
I saw the Ethan Hawke movie, First Reformed.
Oh, really? I've been dying to see it. It's been getting great reviews. I'm sure it'll start playing here in a week or two, probably.
Yeah, sorry, Gary Getzman. I was blanking on his last name. That's Tom Hanks' producing partner, Gary Getzman. He's doing both Mamma Mias. Yeah, I saw First Reformed, which is the Ethan Hawke film. Why am I blanking on so many names right now? Written and directed by Paul Schrader. Yeah, of course. Taxi Driver, American Gigolo, Paul Schrader. It was pretty good. It was interesting.
Cool.
I don't know if we'll talk about it maybe when you catch up to it down the road.
Yeah, I'm interested to see it. Paul Schrader is a very interesting guy, very interesting director. I've always been very curious about his career. He's had some very interesting highs and some interesting lows. I happen to have watched Mamma Mia within the last several days.
Really?
Yeah. Shell had it on. It's on Netflix right now. Came home and she'll start a movie and watch it in chunks. Like she just has it on in the background while she's doing stuff. So I'll come home sometimes and see her in the multiple chunks going through the movie. So I saw Mamma Mia in chunks over the last few days. I hate that movie, by the way. I fucking hate it.
I saw it in theaters, actually.
It's so obnoxious and cloying.
I haven't seen it since,
and just watching it, the thing that is so hard to watch is that I don't know why they felt like they needed to stage the whole thing like it's on a stage. They seem to have forgotten that in a movie you can move cameras and you're not limited to the confines of a stage, because there's like a number where Meryl Streep's singing on a mountainside, and it's just her belting out a song, standing there staring at the fucking clouds for 3 minutes, and it's so boring. It's so boring to look. I'm like, give her something to do, Jesus. This is a movie. And then and who the fuck gave Pierce Brosnan permission to sing that many times? It's just an awful movie. I hope. And here's my next question. I believe I saw an article that said they used like 18 of the 23 ABBA greatest hits in the first movie. So like, what are they gonna do for the next one? Are they just redoing the exact same songs?
They're gonna do the final 5, but just jam them out like it's a Fish concert.
Yeah, they're just gonna like let's have a 20. Let's have a 25-minute.
Solos.
Well, I don't know if you've seen Mamma Mia. Oh, you've seen it. You saw it in theaters. So you said you haven't seen it since. But I don't know if you remember the end of the movie. But Jesus, it fucking ends forever. People talk about Return of the King having 10 endings. Jesus, go watch Mamma Mia. It's literally like almost becomes a joke. Like you think the credits are about to roll, and then like Meryl Streep like comes out and she's like, just fucking with you, and she just starts dancing again, and they do another song, and I'm just like, Jesus, this is just they're just being mean now. Like it's just obnoxious. I fucking hate that movie. And good luck with working with the crew of the second one though. I wish them the best.
Well, I've worked. Gary Getzman has mixed a few of his movies up there before, and I'm looking at it actually. Tom Hanks is not credited on Mamma Mia 2 as a producer or an EP. Gary Getzman is credited as a producer on the sequel. They were both producers, and Hanks was an executive producer on the first one, so I don't know. Maybe Hanks had to bow out for a certain reason, but Gary's a great dude. He's really, really funny guy, really like laid back, calming influence over the whole crew. I know him and his right-hand lady, Nori. They're great people. They've been up there a few times. We did Notes from the Field at HBO one-woman show with Anna Devere Smith. That was another Gary Getzman project. So, friends of the company. So I'm excited to see him.
Very nice, very nice.
And apparently, like, the lunches are catered every day, which is going to be awesome. Catered lunches.
Oh, is that cool? I don't
know what that means. I just assume it means we're gonna have way too much food.
Hopefully, I hope it's because say with catered food, maybe you're good. The quality is only of the choices you get. So it's hopefully they have good taste and they're getting it from a good place that'll have a wide selection.
Oh man, I wish I could remember the name. I would love to shout them out. I think it was called like Mama's Catering for our movie down in Texas. That catered the lunches every day, and it was 15 lunches, and every single lunch was different. The food was so good. It was all homemade. Like, it was this one-woman project, and she just knocked it out of the park every single day. It was unreal.
Nice. Just good mix of varieties of food and stuff to feed a
like
large...
we would get Italian food one day, then Thai food the next, and then she would always have these, like, delicious desserts that would come. I ate so good on that project, man. Whew, God, nice. I miss it.
I had Thai food for dinner tonight.
Did you now?
I did. Yeah, it's Shell's birthday. My fiance Shell. It is her birthday tonight.
Happy birthday, Shell.
Yeah. So I'd work today. I had to go shoot a commercial for a seafood joint. That was my job today. And after I did that, I rushed home, took my dog on a walk, and then we went to dinner. And we went to this place called Thai 9. Shout out to them. We've eaten there quite a bit. It's her favorite restaurant. I think you went. Yeah, you went there with us actually when you visited once. We were talking about that.
I was gonna say I feel like I went there.
Yeah, you went there. Yeah. It's her favorite joint. I like it. My only problem with the place is I never remember what I like there. I don't have like a set meal there. So every time I go there, I feel like I'm searching the menu for like I don't know what I like here, but I always get something new. Today I kind of screwed up. Today was the worst I've screwed up in terms of ordering, where I didn't really like what I got as much as I was hoping.
What'd you get?
It was like a ginger chicken stir fry. It was just a little too much ginger for my taste, and just a little overpowering in the ginger department. In the sauce, I liked it was a bunch of like mushrooms and chicken and peppers and onions and. Rice and other stuff. It was good. It was just instant. It was just the sauce was not to my liking very much. But otherwise, I generally have good food.
Did Shell have a good time? Did she have a good meal?
Yeah, she had a good meal. That's all that matters. She liked it.
That's what matters.
We went on a nice little walk afterwards. We came home. We watched The West Wing. Gave each other some back rubs. It was a nice evening.
Of course, you watched The West Wing.
Yeah, that was her suggestion, man. That wasn't mine.
That's why she's the girl of your dreams.
Yeah, it was. We have like a saying to each other where she's just like, it's like, you want to do West Wings and back rubs tonight? Because we like have a lotion and we like rub each other down all the time.
It just made me throw up in my mouth. I just hate that. I hate that so much. I want everyone to be miserable.
Well, if they hang around you long enough, that can happen.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like any of this mushy love bullshit.
It's my fiance's birthday. I will express my love.
No, happy birthday, Sean.
Well, actually, I'm sorry. It's actually 12:48 my time. It's not her birthday anymore, so fuck that.
Fuck off, Shell.
Yeah, it's not her birthday
Quit
anymore.
your
I don't
bitching.
have to be nice anymore.
Yeah, what are you whining about? Back rubs? Give me a break.
God, yeah. It's
You'll have a back rub in 364 more days, Shell.
Yeah, it's not like we do it twice or 3 times or 4 times a week or anything.
Twice or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Well, that's cool, man. That sounds like a very good day. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it was a nice day, and now I'm, sitting in a closet waiting, patiently for all this stuff to come together. But now we're doing it. We're recording. It's late at night, but it's okay because I don't have to be up super early for work. So let's talk. Let's talk about
what are we talking about?
Let's talk about the really boring game of basketball I watched last night.
Last night wasn't boring. The Celtics won. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't a very competitive game, is I suppose all I mean by that. As someone who is very indifferent to I was actually thinking about this during the game. I feel like I have equal investment in both teams, and that is like a very tepid, very specific interest in terms of just, kind of generally liking LeBron in a kind of like admiring the athlete kind of way, and then also like being such good friends with you, I feel like it's made me like sub default to becoming like partial fans of the teams you're fans of. Not even necessarily because I like them. In some cases, like with the Patriots, it's because I kind of like you have to respect the game at a certain point. You're just like, yeah, they're the best. Look at those numbers, man. Like they're the best. Brady and Belichick. I don't care, if you like them or not, but you have to like respect that. So like regardless of that, I can always admire and appreciate that when they're winning. But like the Celtics, it's more of a thing of now of like, well, I don't want Tom to be in a shitty mood, so I hope the Celtics win.
I think I've matured in that way.
A little, yeah. You're not as bad as you used to be. There used to be just like you'd shut down for a day, and
especially the Celts hit hard. They still do. So this NBA playoffs is interesting from my perspective. The Celtics are my favorite of any sports team, even more than the Patriots. If gun to my head, if I had to choose.
Yeah.
And this Celtics team, this current iteration of the Celtics, without their 2 best players, they're, as of this recording, 1 win away from defeating LeBron James, breaking his streak of 7 straight years going to the NBA Finals with 3 championships mixed in between those 7 years. They're 1 win away from the finals without Kyrie Irving, without Gordon Hayward, with a rookie leading the team in scoring in the playoffs. It's one of the most ridiculous runs I can ever remember by any basketball team. But
it's a battered team versus a gassed LeBron, if you ask me.
Pretty much, yeah. But in the macro view of the playoffs, this has been a really boring NBA playoffs, just from a basketball fan's perspective. There was a Game 4. The Western Conference Finals are the 2 best teams in the league, Golden State and Houston. Game 4 was amazing. It was a classic. Before that, every game in the East, all 5 now, have been decided by double digits except one, which was a 9-point win because Jaylen Brown hit a meaningless dunk with 2 seconds left. Otherwise, that would have also been double digits.
Yeah.
Every game in the West, before that classic Game 4, Golden State had beat Houston by 41 points, I think, in the previous game. It's just
that's
boring,
that's boring, man. Like, half the crowd's going to leave by, like,
the
third at that point.
We are recording. The game, I assume, is over at this point, but I am recording it. So my plan when we finish this record is to get in bed and watch Game 5 of Houston Golden State, which I'm super pumped for. But the way things are going, it's probably not going to be that close, which is a bummer. I hope I'm wrong. But yeah, it's been a weird playoffs. Like, the NBA is at a point right now where the talent levels may be as great as it's ever been. Like, there are so many good players just spread out across the league. But there's such a disparity between a few of these teams who are just the class of the NBA and then everybody else. So teams that are really fun to watch or that have a really good player like Milwaukee with the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or like the Pelicans with Anthony Davis, or the young Philadelphia team. They're all gone now. So it's just Golden State and Houston, the two best teams, playing an unfortunately boring series so far, even though it is tied 2-2, so maybe it'll pick up. And then in the East, you have the LeBron Cavaliers, basically. This guy is doing everything, versus these young upstart Celtics, who I personally think are maybe the most fun team to watch that's left, because they pass the ball a lot. They don't have one guy who's just going to take over the game. You know, it's really a team-first mentality, which I always find more entertaining. Golden State's like that too, but they're such a juggernaut with Kevin Durant now that part of me just wants to say, fuck Golden State.
Yeah. I didn't know if you were going to talk. I didn't know what your situation with the game was or what you were doing with it. I know what happened with the game, so I won't say anything. But
don't spoil it.
I won't say anything. I would just say it was a good game. That's all I'll say.
Oh, nice. Good. That makes me excited. So I won't fall asleep. I'll make sure to stay awake and finish the game.
Yeah, it's a good game. That's all I'll say.
Good. I'm hoping Houston wins, which is weird. Like, I never thought I would root for Houston, but I don't know, man. The Warriors were so great. They were so great, and then Durant had to join the team, and it's just like
explain to people like me who aren't as like diehard basketball people who know like the chess moves that people are playing. Like, give the layman's terms of why rooting for, or why Durant like bloodies the water for you.
So,
or I'm sorry, muddies, not bloodies. Jesus,
it's like a shark bait or something.
Yeah.
So the current iteration of the Warriors really started with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. There were these three players, two guards, and then this kind of do-it-all center who were drafted. They were homegrown talents. And whenever you draft a player and they develop on that team, that's always the best scenario. Like, not only for as a hometown fan, but I think just as a fan of the league. You know, whenever someone is just groomed and developed and becomes a star for the team that chose them, like that believed in them from the beginning, that's always the best scenario you can be involved in.
Like LeBron with Cleveland.
LeBron initially with Cleveland, for sure. Like, even as a Celtics fan, when, you know, Kevin Garnett and Pierce were dominating with the Celtics and LeBron was their main rival, we had so many LeBron haters in Boston, but I always loved him because he's an amazing player, and he was doing it for not only the team that drafted him, but for his actual hometown. You know, it was great.
Yeah.
So Golden State has these three guys, and they just became this unbeatable trio where Curry and Klay Thompson are two of the 10 greatest shooters in the history of the NBA, who just happen to be on one starting backcourt for one team at the same time, hitting their prime at the same time. It's like unprecedented. And then you have this glue guy, Draymond Green, who's one of the best defenders in the league. He can guard a center. He can guard a point guard. He can do all these things. So they became this really fun, exciting team that was just known for being able to shoot from anywhere on the court, move at a super fast pace. They were fun. They had like charisma and attitude. They were cocky on the court.
It's like peak, it's peak Curry too.
Yeah. And in 2015, they won. They beat LeBron and the Cavs. And then the next year, they went 73-9. They broke the unbeatable record of Michael Jordan in 1996 with the Bulls when they won 72 games and only lost 10. That record was considered unbeatable. And then the Warriors did it. They went 73-9, beat Durant in the Western Conference Finals in a classic series that Durant and Oklahoma City almost won. They almost stole that thing. And then they went up 3-1 against LeBron in a rematch. And LeBron and Kyrie Irving came back from 3-1 down, beat the 73-9 Warriors. In my opinion, the greatest finals victory an NBA team has ever had in the history of the league. And the following year,
really?
Durant...
I didn't know that.
They were 73-9. They were the defending champs. Game 5 and Game 7 were in Golden State. And LeBron and Kyrie somehow come back and take 3 straight against a team that lost 9 games all year. That's... unreal.
I mean, it's a good case. I didn't know you were thinking that highly of it.
It still blows my mind.
Yeah, it struck me as a bold statement when you said it at first, but like, you know, yeah, it definitely it's incredible.
It's like the 07 Pats losing to the Giants, sort of big.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, which I was there to witness your reaction to.
Exactly. So after that happens, Kevin Durant, who for those who don't know is probably, if LeBron's still the best player in the NBA, Durant's number 2. Like, he's that good. He came very close to himself beating that 73-9 Warriors, and instead of re-upping or finding a new young team to take the lead on, he joins a team that is coming off an NBA title in 2015 and then a 73-9 record in 2016, and decides to just join them and be a part of that. Like, it just killed any sense of competition that guy had. And it made the league, in my opinion, a lot less exciting, because if they could win 73 games and were one game away from back-to-back NBA titles without the second-best player in the league, how good are they going to be with the second-best player in the league? And, of course, his first year there, they go 16-1 in the playoffs. They lose one game over the entire NBA playoffs last year and just roll over to a championship, and it's over. And it just makes the league so much more boring to me.
You know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
Is when LeBron went to the Heat. And the Heat just became that disgusting team that, was stacked and, started, sucking up everyone.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, but it's so much worse than that, in my opinion. And I was not a fan of that move.
Well, especially when like Ray Allen and people like that were going to the Heat.
Yeah, well, Ray Allen was at the end of his career. That was more of like an affront to Boston fans.
Well, yeah, that was
a league-wide problem.
It was an especially like personal jab. It felt like to you.
The LeBron thing, it is similar. It's definitely like the best comparison, but I think the Durant thing is so much worse, because what LeBron did was basically he started fresh with a new team in Miami. Basically that Miami team became like a shell of its former self pre-LeBron, right? And what they did was they brought LeBron and this great power forward named Chris Bosh onto the Heat, and they decided, okay, us as a trio, we're going to be like the next dominant thing in basketball.
Yeah.
And it felt a little cowardly, is like way too strong of a word, but it felt like, oh, all three of you are trying to take the easy way out. Like, these were three guys who were the leaders of three separate teams in the Eastern Conference, and they said, ooh, if we combine our powers, we won't really have any competition. And they were right. They made the finals every year they were together. But they kind of had to do it together and figure it out together on the fly.
Yeah.
What Durant is doing is joining this well-oiled machine, He's already joining the best. It'd be more like if, like, after the Pats beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, if at that point, like, Aaron Rodgers decided to leave the Packers and join and just be like, oh, I'll just be Brady's backup, or when he's hurt. I mean, it's not even like that. There's really no other comparison, because football is such a bigger sport with 22 starters. Even hockey, you have 4 lines of 3 guys and 3 lines of 2 defensemen. Baseball, you have 9 positional players in a pitcher. Like, it's really hard to make another comparison, because basketball is a 5-man game. Like, there are so few players who can make an impact at any given moment.
Yeah.
There are only 5 players from each team that are on the court at any given time. And when you get to the playoffs, there are really like 8 players total that have any lasting impact in the playoffs for any significant team. So when you take one of those 5 or one of those 8 and you take out, an average NBA player and put Kevin Durant on it to a team that's already won a title and just won 73 games, which is an NBA record, it's just like, I don't know, man. I know some people it didn't bother. Some people said it's more interesting because when are you going to see this level of basketball played again? I get all that. I just don't agree with it. Like, I'd rather there be way more competition. So the fact that tonight's game was good and that Houston and Golden State are at least tied 2-2 makes me very happy. It's just a bummer because Golden State was and still is very fun to watch. I just really have a hard time rooting for him, because to me, whenever Durant wins a title with those guys, you're kind of in a lose-lose where you're like, yeah, you were supposed to win. How is this that exciting?
Yeah.
And if they lose, then it becomes like a holy shit, how'd you guys choke,
Well, I do think about, as a weird example, what you said about the team still has to figure it out in a way, because, you have those like the Olympic dream teams, where they take the best of the best and they throw them together, and you realize like, oh, you can't have that many starters on a team or that many big guys on a team or that much ego on a team. You need to have some low men who are willing to just like throw some elbows down there, or, do the dirty work. And
Right.
there is still that figuring out, but it's when you're doing it at that high of a caliber, it's whatever. It's still unfair, beyond whatever. It's whatever. It's the Yankees. It's whatever.
No, for sure. And like, what's interesting actually about that? So, Game 4, Houston had just lost by 40 points in Game 3 to go down 2-1. Game 4 is in Oakland. Everyone assumes Golden State's going to walk. Like, it's just going to be another blowout. They're going to go up 3-1, and the series is basically over, right?
Right.
Houston ends up winning, and a big reason why they ended up winning is because there was an injury pregame. Andre Iguodala, who comes off the bench for the Warriors usually, he's this old vet who's been in the league for like 13 years at this point. He was hurt and he couldn't play. And if you were just to talk who are the best players on the Warriors, you immediately go Kevin Durant, then you go Steph Curry, then you go Klay Thompson, then you go Draymond Green, then you probably get to Andre Iguodala, right? But he is one of those guys that you were talking about who will do the dirty work, who will play hard on defense, who will scrap for loose balls, who will like battle for offensive rebounds, things that those elite players don't always have to worry about. And it really, like, you lose that one integral piece no matter how good your team is, and it can really throw off your balance. And they lost a game that a lot of fans were completely stunned by. Like a game that I think Golden State was favored by 9 or 10 points, which in a conference finals to be favored by that much when you're down to the final 4 teams in the league is enormous. Like that's a huge, huge advantage. So that just goes to show, like, even though you have Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green on the court, you lose that one little glue piece and it can really throw things for a loop. Now, I know Iguodala didn't play again today. I don't know how much that carries over now that they're back in Houston, or if it's just a coaching adjustment that they have to figure out, okay, what is our rotation now? But it just has this ripple effect. And to go back to Boston, that's what really blows me away with how well the Celtics are doing. I mean, Gordon Hayward, who was their prize free agent signing last summer, this all-star caliber wing player, goes down in game 1 of the season, like way back in October. So as big of a blow as it was, they had all season to really adjust and develop and game plan without him, right? But then Kyrie Irving, who's their Steph Curry, he's their star player. He's the reason why LeBron was able to come back and beat the Warriors 2 finals ago. Like, without Kyrie Irving, that championship doesn't happen in Cleveland. He goes down in March, and they think he's coming back for the playoffs. And then it's like, oh, maybe the end of the first round. Oh, maybe after the first round. Oh, no, never mind. He's done for the whole playoffs. So while they had like 6 weeks or whatever to really figure out what they want to do, suddenly they're going in with their effectively last year, their 4th string guard is now their starting point guard for this entire playoff run. And instead of Gordon Hayward, this all-star wing player, they have an actual rookie who turned 20 like 2 months ago as their leading scorer, and they're somehow still a game away from making the NBA Finals. It's just, that's what I'm talking about, like with the Iguodala injury as well, even on a team as stacked as Golden State. When you lose those pieces, especially pieces that big, it just has such a ripple effect in basketball where you really can't hide deficiencies the way you can in the other major sports. Like...
Well, yeah, the depth of your roster isn't even that big, at the end of the day. Like how many guys you can actually have on a team.
And not even depth, but just the way it affects rotations too. Like you lose a player of that caliber, and suddenly you're not only is your backup point guard having to fill in all those minutes, but now you're relying on your wings or your center to play even more minutes than they're used to, and then they get tired earlier, and they're asked to do things that they're normally not supposed to do, like go out onto the perimeter and guard smaller, faster guys and stuff like that. Like there's such a chasm that happens in basketball. Like it's just such a fine line. And normally, like the go-to rule in basketball, especially in a 7-game series, is whichever team has the best player in that series, that team is more often than not going to win. Like more so than in other sports, a single player's dominance can really carry you in basketball in ways that can't be carried in other sports, just because there are so many other moving parts in football. Like Randy Moss can be the greatest receiver of all time on the Vikings, and his team may not make the playoffs, and it's through no fault of his own. There are just way too many other things going on in football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like things like that. In basketball, the players are so individually dominant throughout the course of a game that for the Celtics to be up 3-2 on arguably the greatest player of all time, despite his poor cast and despite how tired he looked last night, it's just crazy. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, like, even him being gassed and having a bad night, I think even the announcer said at the end of the game, like, by the way, we're comparing this against his normal numbers. These are still incredible numbers, and that he's putting up every game. But all right, so here's my next question: where does the potential greatest player of all time go after he loses this year?
Well, it's assuming he's going to lose.
I think they're gonna. I don't think they make it. I think he runs out of gas, and I've never had much faith in the Cleveland as a whole team without him.
They definitely miss. They miss Kyrie Irving more than Boston does right now, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but J.R. Smith isn't gonna fucking carry them all the way. You know,
J.R. Smith's a bum.
Yeah, Kevin Love's not gonna fucking carry them all the way. I mean, he's all right, but you know, these, I don't know. I just don't see it happening for him without LeBron being at full potential, and they play him too many minutes, too many games. He's just, I don't know. This happens all the time. He just seems he's getting older. I know he's cryogenically freezing himself every day now, but whatever. He's whatever it is he's doing, you know, he's still tired, man. So I don't know, but it's a long break. You know, he gets some time before the next game. So
no, the next game's tomorrow.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Compared to what was that? 2-3 days? That's a long break for them right now.
No, that's just a day off. That's nothing, especially with travel.
I'm looking at what day. I was forgetting what day the fucking games were on. I was thinking of the game I watched. What was the game before that? When was game 4?
Game 4 was on Monday.
Monday, okay.
Which the Cavs won.
Yeah, the big fucking LeBron's 44-point game or whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't know where he goes, man. I mean, I still think it's very possible that they beat the Celtics. I mean, tomorrow is in Cleveland. The Celtics have been a terrible road team. LeBron at home, I don't know. It's going to take a lot for Boston to beat him there. And then you have a Game 7, and if I could have any player for a Game 7 in the NBA, it would be LeBron James for sure.
Obviously, it's impossible, but how mad would you be if he went to Golden State?
I mean, at that point, that would just be so funny.
Yeah,
that it would be hard to even be mad. It would just be kind of hilarious. But then you're literally setting yourself up for okay, you guys have to win 74 games, or else
you guys
your
better be the best fucking
team
team of all time. Or
you have to go 82-0, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I know the rumors are obviously there's a chance he stays in Cleveland. The big rumor is that he'll go to the Lakers, which I think is very, very possible. There's another rumor that he would go to Philly, which personally I don't see that. I think that is just made up by, reporters or journalists or
there's
NBA
rumors
fans
he's going
on
to
Twitter.
every team.
Well, I mean, there are only so many teams that can afford him right now. But I think the most likely scenario is that he goes to the Lakers or stays in Cleveland. The Lakers make sense because, and I've heard this from other people, so this isn't my own original thought, but I agree with it. LeBron's at the stage in his career now where, he's doing things we've never seen before in terms of the amount of games he's already put on his body and the skill level that he's been able to maintain at this point in his career. It's pretty much unheard of. You have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to a lesser extent, and then LeBron. He's already played a few hundred more games in his career than Michael Jordan ever did, I think.
A lot of that's because of college, though, right?
Well, still, I mean, the physical beating and travel that you put on an NBA season versus a college season you can't compare the two, Well, just he's younger in season 15 than Jordan would have been in season 15, but there's the fact that there really hasn't been, except for defensively, there's been no significant drop in LeBron's game as a rebounder, passer, or scorer. It's unprecedented.
Hey, for me, this is like people who are talking about Joe Montana being better than Tom Brady or something. I'm like, sure. Hey, look, for me, I'm fine with people saying Tom Brady's the best. I'm fine with people saying LeBron's the best right now. I have no problem with anyone who believes that at this point. I think he's proven.
Well, they're good comparison, LeBron and Brady, because it's not only like their success as champion and as MVP, but their longevity at this point is, I think, what's really putting them over the edge. Like, if you wanted to compare Jordan to LeBron or compare Montana to Brady, I think you reach a point where you also have to factor in the number of seasons. So the idea becomes, well, would you rather have Montana's career of 4 Super Bowls and the X number of years he played versus Brady and his 5 Super Bowls plus, 16, 17, 18 years that he's playing? And LeBron's going to be at that point too, where LeBron, in 3 years, he's going to be at season 18, and he's probably not going to be that much different of a player than he is right now. And that's when people who really nerd out over this shit really have to take a look and be like, okay, at this point, would you rather have LeBron's career if you could pick one career to start your like dream team for whatever home team you root for,
Yeah.
Then it becomes a real question. I think the Lakers make sense, though, because at this point, his career is, on the back half for sure. He probably knows he has like 5 dominant years left. And then eventually Father Time has to catch up and be like, okay, dude, enough. And LeBron is already, he's already a businessman. He's already looking into franchising pizza places and shit. And he wants to be
Space Jam
a billionaire.
2.
Yeah, he wants to be a billionaire. He wants to be like the next media mogul ex-athlete, right? And the way to do that is to go to Los Angeles, where he already has, I think, 3 properties, where Magic Johnson who is a great example of an ex-player turned media mogul who now owns a baseball team and has done so many things with his money and has turned his money around into like $1 billion property where he's worth that much money.
Yeah.
And I think LeBron is probably thinking beyond his basketball career now. And I think if he can go to the Lakers for a few years, bring up that young team, make them relevant and a title contender, and build up all that goodwill in LA, not that he would need it, but to go there now and really start thinking about that side of his life, like that second career that he wants, it definitely makes the most sense. And if he cares about being on a competitive basketball team, the Lakers may make more sense anyway, because not only can they sign LeBron, but they can go after other great players like Paul George. They can try to trade for Kawhi Leonard. I mean, they're one of the few teams this offseason that has a ton of flexibility with the amount of money they can play players and the young assets they can have to make trades to get really good really fast. So I think it'll be the Lakers, which is just crazy to think of LeBron in LA is an absurd notion. And LeBron in the West,
you'll go see him play.
Not only will I see him play, but if LeBron wants to go to the Western Conference and get out of the Celtics conference, hell yeah, bring that shit on.
Here's my shitty segue then. Speaking of Tom Brady, one thing he will not be doing next season, he will not be taking a knee. Because what's today? Friday. I keep losing track of the day. It's Friday now at 1 a.m. On Wednesday, I believe, the NFL announced that they're not going to be allowing players to kneel anymore unpunished. If they kneel during the national anthem, as they have been, that Colin Kaepernick started back in 2016 to protest police violence and the African-American struggles against police brutality and racism in the country, he started taking a knee to protest that, and now the NFL is saying if you do that, you will be fined several $1,000s each time. So there's been multiple reactions to this. Tom, I imagine I know what your reaction is, but hit me with it.
It's fucking stupid. The NFL is fucking stupid. Once again, I think it's not only a fine; it's a fine for the player and the team, right? And then I think it's also a 15-yard penalty, like before the game even starts.
That's ridiculous.
Which is hilarious. So, like, if players on either team kneel simultaneously, or they're just offsetting penalties, and you just start the game as is anyway, like.
Yeah, they should form a union.
The players' union is currently looking at, because they were not approached about this at all. They were not asked for their input about this. So I know the players' union is furious, and they're saying, we're looking over our current collective bargaining agreement with the ownership to see if this violated any protocol that the players' union should have been involved in this decision making. I mean, look, in full disclosure, like the NBA has a rule where they punish you for kneeling before or during the anthem. It goes back to a player named Mahmoud Abdul Rauf in the 90s. I forget when, but I remember when I was a kid. He was a Muslim player, and he knelt protesting, and they shut that shit down like immediately. But what the NBA does allow is for a player's expression of some type of peaceful protest. Like, you see it a lot in games. LeBron James wearing "I Can't Breathe" shirts in warm-ups and stuff like that. And they not only allow, but they vocally support a player's right to voice their opinion, and they don't separate it from the league. Like, they kind of know, like any fucking smart person would know, that like just because a player says something or protests something in a particular way, it doesn't speak for the entire organization, right?
Right.
And the NFL, the way they're trying to handle this now at this point in our country is just so dumbfounded. It's just such a plea, not only to the Republican fan base, who somehow has been coerced into thinking that this is like a direct protest of the flag and anthem itself, which it never was and was never meant to be.
They're willfully ignorant about it.
Yeah, they just want to believe a certain thing. And I think the NFL is definitely kowtowing to Trump, because I think they know that Trump is going to start using this rhetoric again come the fall when the midterms show up. Like, the NFL season comes back in September, the midterms are in November, and Trump has already involved himself in this quote-unquote controversy about players kneeling during the national anthem and the flag raising. And I think they're genuinely worried that it's going to come back and it's going to hurt the league politically. Like, it's going to lead to more protests and shit and more people boycotting. And I think, I mean, obviously any decision that an organization makes is going to come back to money. And I think the NFL must think that this is financially in their best interest to make this rule, but it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL doesn't exactly have the best record right now over the last decade or so of just how they've chosen to go about handling players, handling controversies, handling a whole slew of things, from the whole Nipplegate controversies to how they've handled concussions to how they've handled, even things like, not to get you on a tantrum, but Deflategate, all that stuff. Like, there's been a whole slew of bad publicity for the NFL over the last decade, and they've just, a lot of their numbers are slipping, and a lot of people attribute that to the quality of the game going down, which, I think is debatable. I still like an NFL game, but it's getting harder for me to watch, but that's more because of my team than the NFL as a league. But that said, it's getting harder and harder to, want to watch the NFL when it's just such a shitty organization that's not taking care of its guys. Yeah,
I mean, to me, the biggest dilemma as an NFL fan is really the slow manner in which they really started to tackle, no pun intended, I guess, but when they tried to really start handling concussions and CTE. I mean, the fact that high school leagues were on the cutting edge of helmet technology and brain safety, that the NFL had to follow their lead instead of the other way around, when the NFL should really be the ambassador for all of this. And they were just trying to shove that shit in a corner and act like it didn't exist. And then we have guys like, we had a Kansas City Chiefs player drive to the facility and blow his brains out in front of the coaching staff, and his brain was riddled with CTE. We have Aaron Hernandez from the Pats, who, I'm not going to excuse all the awful gangbang shit he did. Like, he seems like he was just a straight up fucking serial killer, but his brain was riddled with CTE. We have, like, the average lifespan of an NFL player is 10 years younger than the average lifespan of an average American male. We have all this awful knowledge at this point, and the NFL has just been so slow to adapt to it. And then they get so many social issues wrong, like not only with the protesting, but shit like Ray Rice punching his wife out in the elevator, and they suspend him for only 2 games, but you smoke weed and you're suspended for 4. And then
Michael Vick can beat dogs and torture dogs. He's allowed to come back.
And like, there's video footage of Ray Rice knocking his wife unconscious in that elevator. So the suspension goes up to indefinite. but wait, NFL, didn't you see that footage? And they say, no, they didn't. Turns out that they did. And they were just trying to bury it like they do for everything. They're just so reactionary on everything. They're just such cowards, and like they come off as villainous.
It's the very definition of the cover up is worse than the crime.
Yeah,
they're always
really
trying to just like cover their tracks, and you're like, why didn't you just do the right thing in the first place, man? Like, it wasn't that hard, and you clearly just were being stupid or ignorant or willfully blind to whatever problems that are facing the players or the fans or the coaches, whatever controversy it's been over the last few years. They just handled it so fucking poorly. And I don't know, what do you think obviously I don't think you're going to stop watching Pats games or any of the other games, but like, where do you think fandom goes from this point on with the NFL? Do you think, because it feels like players kneeling loses some of those dumb, ignorant country folk people who are completely misrepresented, or who are completely misrepresenting what they think that kneeling means. And then you have people like me who almost don't want to watch it because of the way they're treating the players who are kneeling. So you have these dual interests that are not wanting to watch for different reasons. You also have the availability of DVR and the availability of sports highlights on your phone and being able to stream games, and the ability, like you said, you didn't watch the game tonight, you're going to watch it later, the basketball game. And you also have more channels now than ever. You have more streaming options than ever. Like, it used to be that people had 20, 50, 60 channels, or the old days when it was 5 or whatever, or 2, and all there was on was football. So more people watched it, and now they have more options, and they have more chances to watch other things besides that. So more people are watching it later or watching other things, and numbers are just going down. So I'm curious, do you think the NFL, because of bad publicity, is losing its numbers? Do you think it's it's probably a mixture of everything, but do you think, how much of it do you think is the quality of the game? And do you think it's the players, the quality of the players, the quality of the broadcast? Like, what do you think is going to most affect the league going forward?
I think honestly, I think some of it is actually the quality of the game. Mainly because of the way they have started to schedule it. I mean, I think the idea of having a Thursday night game every week was just a horrible idea. It's one of those...
Everyone hates it.
It sounds good on paper, like, yay, more football, but all it really does is dilute the brand. It makes watching football less of an event, like less of a TV event, When it was just Sunday and then one game on Monday night, Sunday became like you had to watch football if you were a football fan, because that was the only time you were getting your fix.
Yeah.
Now we have these games on Thursday every single week, and they're always fucking terrible because the players don't have enough time to recover from the game before.
There's more injuries.
There are more injuries. The games are just sloppy, and it makes it less fun to watch. Like, not only now are we getting a diluted football schedule where games become less exciting on paper, just the idea of them, because you're never going to go more than 2 or 3 days without a football game to watch, but the games are worse because players play worse when they only have 2 days to recover after basically getting in a car crash over and over again for 3 hours every Sunday, which is basically what they're doing to their bodies.
And there's other things like, I think of, when I hear reports about how they don't even pay refs to train year round, because they don't, so these people aren't even like keeping up with new rules or studying in the off season so that they can be properly, checked for their eye vision and all that stuff every season. They're not doing anything like that. So like we have, games are being poorly called constantly. Like whenever you watch, there's all kinds of reasons that, it's annoying to watch besides just the, commercial breaks and all that.
Yeah, I mean, we had the referee strike like 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, and they brought in the replacements. Jesus.
Yeah, the NFL has just done so many things wrong, and like what you're saying about the new rule about the kneeling, basically you've just pissed off both sides of the spectrum now, because the fans who were really anti-kneeling took it out. A lot of them took it out on the league and stopped watching football.
And how many of them were watching football in the first place, too? By the way.
Not as many as were vocal about it, obviously, but I do know that the NFL had a dip in viewership. I don't know how much of that was because of people protesting the Kaepernick shit versus, in my opinion, the quality of the league just went way down. Like, I definitely watched the least amount of football last year that I had in a very long time, but it was just because the games weren't exciting to watch. Like, I would put on a Monday Night Football game and it would just be dog shit and I wouldn't want to watch it. Like, I figure I could do something else with my time, you know?
Yeah, and it seems like peak fantasy league has kind of started to decline. I don't hear as much about like those types of big group things going on as much. I know they still are, obviously, but just not. I used to. Everybody seemed to be a part of it. Now I'm not quite as interested in doing it every year.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's still pretty big. But another thing that has created is, I think there's also a NFL fandom itself, to me, seems a lot more spread out, especially with younger fans. Like, there's less, rabid home-based fandom. Maybe not even just in the NFL, but in general, I think it's more. The NFL is closer to the NBA in that it's a league more about the players than the teams in a lot of ways. I think there are many NBA fans who just follow LeBron regardless of the team he's on, or Durant regardless of the team he's on. And I think a lot of that is true with football as well, especially with fantasy football. Like, people just become attached to guys. And what that does is create what the NBA has really succeeded in doing, is creating personalities. Creating sounds manufactured and cynical. That's not what I mean. But really showcasing a player's personality. And I think that's a huge reason why the NBA has become so popular and continues to grow in popularity. And I think the NFL is trying to get there, but the way the league handles the players is just so antithetical to that, and really makes you kind of like personally dislike the way the league handles shit when they can't even respect the player's right to peacefully protest over something that isn't about what its detractors say it's about. And then you also have a collusion case Kaepernick is suing the entire league over, basically saying he was blacklisted for his political beliefs. And they've been able to find in the case that most teams who refused to hire him viewed him as a starting caliber quarterback, which was always the company line of like, well, he's just not good enough to play in the league anymore, which
ridiculous.
Anyone who follows the NFL knows that was complete and utter bullshit. So there's just, I don't know, man, there's just so much to dislike about the NFL right now. And I'll keep watching because I'm a Patriots fan, and this current Patriots dynasty is the greatest thing that's ever been seen in football. It's like the pinnacle of football, in my opinion. So I can't really turn away from that. But knowing that the owners voted 30-0. I know the 49ers and the New York Jets abstained from voting on this new penalty for kneeling, which I applaud them for doing, even though I wish they would have just voted no and actually voiced some dissent in a kangaroo court for once. But
yeah,
that means that Robert Kraft and the Patriots voted yes on it, and that really pisses me off. So I don't know.
Well, it's easy for me not to watch the NFL because my team, the Cincinnati Bengals, are quite, a little dead to me right now. They're just, but until Marvin Lewis is stripped from this team, I feel like it's going to be hard for me to kind of get back in line with the team, because it's just, I feel like his era is done. I've given him enough chances. The fact that he has been with the team as long as Belichick has been with the Patriots is absurd. It's upsetting.
He has to have nudes. He has to have nudes.
What the fuck does Marvin Lewis have on the Brown family?
Something.
He's got
something awful on them.
One day, I hope we find out. Maybe it'll make all these years worth it because it's such juicy information. But I don't know. But so as long as Marvin Lewis is in the NFL, that's what's going to prevent me from watching. Also, I also obviously feel like players should be allowed to peacefully protest however they like. I am a proud lover of the country, which goes without saying, I think. But, I'm a cornball, man. I get cheesy. I have at times, I still can get a little, welly, in the eyes, a little welled up when, the anthem's playing, because, or the Star Spangled Banner is playing and you're watching the flag. Sometimes I'll get an image of the Olympics. I always think about winning a gold medal at the Olympics. Not me personally, but I think about the players up on the pedestal and that moment when they see the flag and everything. And I feel like, oh man, that's got to be a huge rush to represent your entire country. And I don't know, I think about that a lot, and I get really emotional. So I'm someone who has gotten very emotional at the flag, even in recent years. But at the same time, if someone wants to burn it, then I don't really care, man. If they've got their reasons, then I feel like that's their right, and that's what true freedom looks like. So
There is, but there are also, I don't know, like to compare kneeling to burning a flag is also an extreme that I think is unfair to the players who kneel.
Yeah, especially the players who kneel, and especially it's like, you see those memes about like, they said when we were out in the streets to go, stop protesting. When we peacefully protested, they said, to stand up, stop kneeling. You're causing too much ruckus. Like when they fought back, people called us, monsters. It's like there's no winning. Like no one's ever gonna like listen to these people when especially the African American community is complaining or upset about something. There is a large section of white people in this country that are gonna reject that complaint like whole cloth, no matter what it is, because they just can't. It's not even. And I think what growing up in a kind of what I call Dayton, Ohio, the belly fat of the Bible Belt. It's like we've still got a little bit of it, but it's all just kind of like drooping out from the gut and a little bit over the tighter straps of it down south. But I grew up around a lot of these people, and they don't think of it as like hatred, and I think that's why they get so upset when you call them racist or something like that. They're like, I don't hate black people. And it's like, it's not about hatred as much as it's about you broadly generalizing feelings about all of them as a group based on your opinions of one or two of them that you might have particularly read about, and also like a willful ignorance of their culture, their history, and their place in this country. And you don't have to agree with every single thing that they're doing, but you can still just, at some point, you just got to shut up, man. Like, I don't know.
Exactly. I agree with that completely. I think to a certain extent, I mean, this is just another systemic example of trying to control and confine black and brown people, unfortunately. I don't know how much of that was, like I said, I think the main reasoning that the NFL did what they did was out of fear of political retribution and fear that it would hurt their bottom line. They just happen to have predominantly black playership in the league. But the thing that really drives me crazy is there are so many other examples of ways white people have protested that just don't get flack. And the reason why I took umbrage with your like flag burning example is, to me, burning the flag is a directly anti-American protest. Like that's you saying, this symbol, I want to destroy this symbol that represents your country, right? And while I think flag burning is still illegal, right? Technically?
No, it's legal to burn a flag.
Is it legal to burn a flag?
Yeah,
I thought it wasn't.
No, it's legal. It's
okay.
You will get dirty looks. We have a guy who the college I go to, every year there's a guy who always starts a ruckus, and he does so by standing, or at least a couple years ago he did so by standing on the flag. He just went into like the main quad and just stood on a flag and started talking about police violence and stuff. And he was a white guy. He was trying to like speak out for black violence and police brutality and stuff. So he was standing on a flag, and man, watching the hate that this guy got, you kind of like, you had to admire his balls a little bit, but at the same time, you're like, hey man, like in my opinion, you're allowed to do that because, this is a free country, and that's freedom of speech as far as I'm concerned. And I think freedom of speech is designed to protect, as long as you're not being violent against somebody else, I feel like you should be allowed to do whatever you want. And for me, I still file flag burning under peaceful protest. Like, I understand that it's like an ugly, awful thing to say, but for me, it's the equivalent of like, you're allowed to be in the KKK as long as you don't kill anybody, you're allowed to do disgusting, horrible things that offend people or are radical. That's what the freedom of speech is all about, is defending those things. And even there's things that I think are disgusting and appalling that at times I wish would be shut down, but that's not really in the spirit of this country. So at least in my opinion, I understand why it upsets people though.
Well, I guess to me, like the burning a flag is, it's not being violent against another person, but it's a violent expression. Like you are destroying something. And kneeling during the singing of the national anthem,
obviously, yeah, those two are completely separate.
You cannot be less violent or passive in that action. And that's what really drives me crazy about the outrage that was received with this protest. And yeah, just the idea of so many white people who get so offended by this shit that black people do.
Bunch of pussies.
Not only that, man, but it's like, just try to put yourself in their shoes. Just try to do it. And see, if you get this angry about this shit, if you get this mad about some guy kneeling, imagine how upset you would be if you were a black person and had to deal with the shit that black people have to deal with in this country. Like, just imagine how upset you would be. And then go back to your white bubble and decide if you still want to be that mad about that person kneeling. Like, that's the shit that drives me crazy.
It's a very amorphous process, this sort of bullshit that we do, making up fake life. It's a weird thing, and it is a breeding ground for atypical behavior, and certain people have certain processes.
That doesn't mean it's acceptable. And the point is that things are changing and people need to respect each other differently.
I just realized in this conversation that I have to let go of being angry at him. He never crossed the line on our show with any, sexual whatever. Verbally, yes, he harassed me, but he did apologize. I have to let it go, and I have to give you a chance to for us to be friends again.
Absolutely.
But it's hard because honestly, Jason says this happens all the time. In like almost 60 years of working, I've never had anybody yell at me like that on a set, and it's hard to deal with it. But I'm over it now. I just let it go right here for the New York Times.
She didn't give it up for anybody else.
All right, let's talk about something so much lighter, something happy, something super fun. Let's talk about the great comedy Arrested Development, because nothing bad's happening there, right? Nothing's happened recently. It's just a new season's coming back on Netflix, so nothing to talk about. Nothing bad's happened, right?
Nope.
Cool. So we don't have to talk about anything like controversial or depressing or anything cool. We can just talk about the laughs that are going to be had.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You want you tell me what happened. You break it down. You introduce this one. What happened this week with Arrested Development and the New York Times interview? We sat down with the cast. It got raw.
Yeah, there was a New York Times roundtable with not everybody in the cast, but a good amount of people. Let's see, it was Alia Shawkat, Jeffrey Tambor, Tony Hale, Jessica Walter, Jason Bateman, David Cross, and Will Arnett. So
yes.
a big chunk of the major crew. Basically everyone except for Michael Cera.
Yeah, I was going to say everyone seems to be there but Michael Cera, yeah.
And Portia de Rossi, I guess. So they had this roundtable where they were talking about, what's it like to come back to the show that was so beloved and ahead of its time 15 years later. And they were, having a little back and forth, and they all seemed to get along. And then the interviewer decides to address the elephant in the room and talks about Jeffrey Tambor.
That's not very nice to call him an elephant.
The interviewer actually says it.
I mean, he's pretty fat, but he's not that fat,
So the interviewer actually says, little background for people who don't know. Jeffrey Tambor plays the patriarch in Arrested Development. He was in Larry Sanders' Show. He won a bunch of Emmys for Transparent, a show that he has now been fired from after accusations of verbal and sexual harassment on that show. He denies the sexual harassment, but admits to all of the verbal atrocities that he created, basically just yelling at people, belittling them, bullying them constantly, and it got him fired from the show. So this all happened. The Transparent accusations and revelations came out apparently while they were towards the end of filming season 5 of Arrested Development. So they didn't edit him out of the show. He's going to be in season 5. He was a part of this roundtable. He addresses the idea of there being a season 6, and he says that he would love to be a part of it. So that's what we know now. So the interviewer, and I'm going to quote him directly, says, "I have to address the elephant in the room, which is the allegations from the Transparent set. The Arrested Development cast has been publicly supportive. Jeffrey, if there's another season, do you expect to be a part of it?" He says, "I surely hope so." And then Jason Bateman, the main character of Arrested Development, says, "Well, I won't do it without you. I can tell you that." So they have this little back and forth, and the interviewer brings up a Hollywood Reporter interview Jeffrey Tambor did where he talked about how he's yelled at directors, assistant directors, at Jill Soloway, who created Transparent, and how he lashed out at Jessica Walter, who plays his wife on Arrested Development. And there's this awkward laughter. And then for some reason, instead of letting Jessica Walter just say her piece, Jason Bateman feels the need. I don't know what led him to do this.
Mansplaining.
But it's total mansplaining over and over and over again. Like, not just once, but several times. So
yeah, and then David Cross jumps in there and he says a couple things, you know.
I'm just feel I got to read this whole thing because,
well, not the whole thing. Goddamn.
No, just this first section, because it's amazing to me how Jessica Walter has to finish this point, okay?
Have you listened to the audio, or have you just read it?
No, I've just read the transcript.
The audio is worse because you can actually like hear how upset she sounds. You can just, it's more clear how much they're ignoring her, which is, it makes it harder to hear. Yeah.
Maybe we can play part of the audio then in this.
Yeah, I'll throw some in there. I'll look for some upsetting tidbits to throw in.
The interviewer says, you even said it to Jeffrey Tambor, you even said at one point you lashed out at, and Jessica Walter chimes in and says, Jessica Walter, everybody laughs. And Jason Bateman immediately says, which we've all done, by the way. Jessica Walter responds, oh, you've never yelled at me. Not to belittle what happened, Jason Bateman says. And Walter reaffirms, you've never yelled at me like that. And then Bateman goes on this long-ass explanation about how people do this, and, you know, we're like a family, and people yell at each other and love each other, and I have zero complaints about what's happened on the set. Jason Bateman, no one fucking asked you if you had any complaints. This is about Jessica Walter being abused verbally by Jeffrey Tambor. Will Arnett tries to make a joke about King Bateman's car. David Cross comes in and says, that Jeffrey Tambor is trying to learn. He's trying to grow from this, and I think that's important to remember. And then Jessica Walter has to say to the reporter after all of this, what was your point about that, though? She has to bring the question back to the interviewer because these guys felt the need to just talk over it out of defensiveness for their coworker and insecurity and mansplaining, like all these awful things. So the reporter brings it back up, and then Tambor gets to talk for a moment, and then Bateman comes back with even more bullshit about how people are difficult and you kind of have to learn how to work with that. And then Jessica Walter starts crying. It's crazy. It's a crazy interview. I don't know why. I don't know, man. I don't know what you think about it, but it was so disappointing to read it and see Jason Bateman just, like, it's one thing to defend a guy that you love and care for, right? It's
right.
Another to maybe get so, like, maybe his reaction in the moment was just like diarrhea of the mouth because he was uncomfortable in the moment. But to just go on and on about this and not even let Jessica Walter have her moment to just talk about how she felt and how she dealt with it, it's just insane to me.
Well, I think what's particularly interesting about it is not that Bateman is dismissive of Walters directly in terms of telling her that she's wrong or that she needs to shut up. It's nothing that directly cruel. I think what's so hard to listen to about Bateman is that he keeps kind of coddling everything he's saying in these, well, not to excuse what Jeffrey did, but there's a lot of buts everywhere, you know? So everything's kind of couched like, you know, obviously this is disturbing behavior, but, you know, this is a film set and actors need to be emotional and it can get awkward and you have to deal with that. And, you know, obviously we've had very limited, you know, we've had our own personal experiences on film sets and you've just came from one. And obviously, yes, there is, especially when you're doing emotional scenes, a delicate tightrope to walk by everyone on the cast and crew in terms of respecting the actors and respecting the emotion of the scene. And, you know, there is that involved, and you have to respect the materials. But, you know, it's different if you're on a slapstick comedy compared to if you're doing, you know, Mad Men or something. And at the same time, you don't need to be a dick to do your work. As long as everybody's doing their work, anybody should be able to go to work and not be screamed at by anybody. Like, my brother used to have a job at a newspaper place where the manager, he was, the way he managed was by screaming like at everybody and calling them stupid motherfuckers like every day. And you're just like, who wants to work like that? Like, you're an awful human being if you treat people like that. And I don't care what excuse Tambor or Bateman or anybody want to make about the emotional needs of actors. But I think that's all a bunch of bullshit, and I think that attitude needs to change. And we just obviously need to learn to respect everybody. But I also think the real lesson here for not just Bateman, but like guys generally, like I'm sure I've probably done this too in terms of defending people that you want to defend or something, like, you know, like whether it's Louis C.K. or somebody that you like really want to like, you're just like, but, you know, you're like, I understand that it was terrible, but I understand because of this and this. And I just feel like, especially when someone's being that vulnerable in front of you, like try to be aware of like everyone's experiences and their emotions and, you know, be empathetic.
Yeah, it's this was kind of eye-opening and disturbing to me in a way because it really hammered home how it's like the first time we got an in real-time example of someone trying to justify someone else's horrible behavior out of, you know, love for that person or whatever was going on in Jason Bateman's mind. But Jeffrey Tambor and Jessica Walter are sitting right next to him. And he just feels this need to, yeah, like you said, to put all those butts in there. Like, I'm not condoning it, but, you know, this shit happens sometimes. It's like, just...
Or he says something, he says something like...
People just need to shut up and listen. Like, just listen to her and have empathy for her. Like, that's all you're expected to do in that moment, you know? Like, this isn't about Jason Bateman at all, so why are you even talking about it? It's a question about these two people who were the aggressor and the victim in an abuse like that happened. And Jessica Walter has to go on and clarify, like, you can say all these butts you want, but I've been working for almost 60 years and nobody's ever yelled at me like that before on a set. It's just never happened before. It happened with Jeffrey Tambor. And this is after everyone on that couch knows about all of the abuse allegations Jeffrey Tambor has received that got him fired from this show that was so critically revered and that he was considered a trailblazer for. Like, that couldn't have been an easy decision for that show. But they obviously did it because I'm assuming the evidence was so overwhelming that he was verbally abusive. And the idea that a guy just feels the need to try to like wash their hands of that or make excuses for that, it's a great example of kind of what's still so wrong in the conversation that we're having. And I will give Louis C.K. is another great example because what you were saying about like the yeah but for his fans, he yeah butted himself in his own apology, which was kind of bullshit, you know, like, yeah, I took advantage of these people because they admired me and I was doing this. I was just fucking apologize. Just say you were wrong and say you're sorry, you know? And like, he couldn't even do that. So I will give Jason Bateman credit. I'm going to read really quickly. He tweeted out, I think earlier today or this morning. It's a 4-part tweet. Based on listening to the New York Times interview and hearing people's thoughts online, I realized that I was wrong here. I sound like I'm condoning yelling at work. I do not. It sounds like I'm excusing Jeffrey. I do not. It sounds like I'm insensitive to Jessica. I am not. In fact, I'm horrified that I wasn't more aware of how this incident affected her. I was so eager to let Jeffrey know that he was supported in his attempt to learn, grow, and apologize that I completely underestimated the feelings of the victim, another person I deeply love, and she was sitting right there. I'm incredibly embarrassed and deeply sorry to have done that to Jessica. This is a big learning moment for me. I shouldn't have tried so hard to mansplain or fix a fight or make everything okay. I should have focused more on what the most important part of it all is. There's never any excuse for abuse in any form from any gender, and the victim's voice needs to be heard and respected, period. I didn't say that and instead said a bunch of other stuff and not very well. I deeply and sincerely apologize. Okay, like he seems genuine there, and that seems like a real apology, and it seems like he understands what he did wrong, which is great, you know? So hopefully this is just, like you said, a learning experience for him, and honestly, it was kind of eye-opening for me because it makes me wonder, like, have I ever been in a position like that where someone's trying to talk about something that maybe another person I knew did that bothered them or hurt them, and I kept trying to like brush it aside or excuse it in some way because, oh, but that person probably was having a bet or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's so much complexity that goes way beyond this person abused me and we need to punish the abuser. Like there's there's a lot more to the conversation than just someone having to deal with it, I guess, and how it affects other people and the way we treat other people and value other people's opinion and their voice and how they feel about a situation like this.
Especially because obviously Arrested Development's a ensemble, but Jason Bateman's probably number one on the call sheet, I would guess. And for him to say something like letting Jeffrey know, like, well, I wouldn't do the show without you. You know, like he's like staking his claim like very early on in the conversation and kind of like stuff like that, like which he probably doesn't realize how deeply insensitive that is.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, to her to say, you know, like, well, your feelings don't matter because if he's not coming back, I don't care how that makes you feel. I won't do the show. And those are the types of things like you just said that I think all guys should probably learn from and try to be self-reflexive about. And yeah, that's the important thing that these conversations come from. And I hope Jason Bateman was sincere. Obviously, he comes off like a pretty bad. I also thought David Cross came off a little bit like, well, you know, what separates Tambor is that he actually apologized. And I was like, you know, like it's kind of like he's kind of making excuses. Or, you know, none of them came off really great. Bateman comes off the worst. But yeah, it's an unfortunate interview. I'm not that excited for season 5 of Arrested Development. Season 4 didn't do much for me. So I don't know, I don't know how quickly I was going to watch it anyway, but I am a fan of the show generally, and hopefully it's a good season. I don't know if I'll be watching it.
Apparently Mitch Hurwitz re-edited season 4.
Yeah, I heard that.
Which is in the article.
Yeah, because the way they had to do that, everyone was so busy, they basically got their own separate character episodes and they didn't really meet till the end because he couldn't afford to get everybody on the same schedule and shooting at the same time. So it's a really like disjointed, fractured season that's kind of awkward and strangely paced, and it just never really worked. So that really kind of burned me out on the show for a little bit. I mean, I still love the early seasons, but hopefully season.
So did he re-edit it to make them more
intertwined? Yeah, he that they're more like flow, you know, like intercut within each other, so it's not quite each person with their own episode. So I guess that's how it's recut together.
So I guess this goes back to the initial question of like, I know we've talked about it briefly before, but separating the art from the artist, do you have any reservations about watching it because Jeffrey Tambor's in it?
No, part of it is I just think it's past its, you know, it's for me, it's very like, I'm super busy. I only have time for so many shows. And unless I hear that it's back in its prime and really like firing on all cylinders, I don't know that I feel like it's kind of past its peak, and I'm sure it's doing good stuff, but you know, I'm so busy and I don't have much time for all those shows that I used to. And, you know, it's about prioritizing. That's more about that for me than Jeffrey Tambor's existence, like offending me or anything like that. Cause I don't consider I never watched Transparent, so like that decision didn't really affect me at all, and I'm more attached to the early seasons of Arrested Development. So for me, you know, what his loss of a career hasn't really affected me all that much, you know.
It's interesting because I'm maybe a tiny amount conflicted, but especially after reading this, you know, everyone seems to be in his corner, and even Jessica Walter, after she, you know, is able to finally get out what she wants to say. She basically says that she's like learned to forgive it. It doesn't sound like she's totally over it, even though she says that she is. But obviously she's willing to continue working with him. So I will check the show out because I love it. But you know what's weird? This just made me realize, and I don't know how hypocritical this makes me or not, but like if he were to say he were to be the lead in a movie coming up and more allegations like this came out, and I would have real pause over whether or not to see it. I also bought the complete Larry Sanders Show on Blu-ray after the Transparent allegations came out.
He's a supporting character in that, you know.
But not only that, but part of me, I think in my head, if I even thought about it, which I honestly don't know if I did, this is why it's so weird, I'm just realizing this now. But like, in my head, I think it's like, well, did that all happen before? Like, he started to become a bastard, and does that make it okay? It's just, I don't know. It's just weird. I just kind of had that realization that, like, buying that box set, like, that didn't sway my opinion whatsoever, because I'm like, oh, it's the greatest show ever, and it's finally on Blu-ray. I have to own it.
I mean, whenever I'm watching, like, Ferris Bueller or Deadwood or Beetlejuice, I'm looking at Jeffrey Jones being like, dude, that's a pedophile right there.
Yeah, for sure. Or Seventh Heaven, right?
Yeah. So, you know, you're always kind of like, oh, I mean, sometimes you forget, you know, I'll be watching the movie or the show or whatever, and I'll see him, and I'm like, oh, yeah. just watching him, dance his Harry Belafontaine song and loving it every minute. And then it's just like, oh yeah, he's a fucking child molester. Or I don't even remember if he molested. I think it was just child porn. I don't remember,
Yeah.
but it's still, gross, whatever, horrible.
We definitely need to have a conversation. We need to have a whole episode dedicated to separating the art from the artist. And
I mean,
because
it's just going to keep coming up. Like just this week, we have Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, that happened. I thought I dreamt that. That actually did happen, huh?
Yeah. I mean, like it's going to keep coming up. We don't need to do a full episode. It's just going to come up in every episode.
Well, no, I mean,
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. But
because I do feel like there are some people that I'm willing, like Bill Cosby, I don't ever need to watch anything or any stand-up he's ever done again. I'm fucking done with Bill Cosby. He's a serial rapist, and he can fuck off and go to hell.
Yeah.
But I watched Rosemary's Baby 2 Halloweens ago. So I don't know, man. It's weird.
Yeah, man. Early Polanski is like really high on my all-time lists, like how a number of his titles are. So like that's always been difficult for me.
Yeah, so it's just I kind of want to have the conversation just so I can kind of get my head straight on why I permit certain things still but not others. And is it just because if I'm not a fan of the person anyway, it's easy to say goodbye to his career? And if they're super influential to me, it's a lot harder. And how selfish is that? Or does it even matter? Because if I'm just watching stuff for myself, who gives a shit, because it doesn't affect other people. I don't know. There's just a whole,
do we want to like
a whole can of worms there.
You want to make like a scale, like a 0 is just an asshole, a 3 is a pervert.
Let's make a Kinsey scale and round up every asshole in Hollywood.
Like a 10 is a monster, and we'll just start ranking them. We'll be like, all right, where do we stand on Louis C.K.? Is he like a 5, a 4? Like where's it? Kevin Spacey's like an 8.
Like we can watch Tarantino movies, but not the ones Weinstein produced, and We'll apply
some math and see who's the worst monster in Hollywood these days.
That could be kind of fun. We could do a really morbid episode about that.
Actually,
that would be really fucked up in a really funny way, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, did you see the articles that came out about Woody Allen this morning from Moses Farrow?
That he's basically being punished for something he didn't do, right?
Yeah, Moses wrote a lengthy op-ed this morning and published it about defending Woody and basically saying, here's why the accusations against him, I've always defended him. And he, lists all the reasons why. And he goes on to explain about his childhood and what it was like being raised by Mia Farrow and the type of household that it was. And, it's such a complicated, and then you read Dylan Farrow's reaction to it, and basically they're both accusing each other of very, complicated stuff, and they both seem to have very good reasons, and it's like, well, I don't want to doubt this person who's accused him, but I also see that these other people have a number of good, things backing up their side of the story too, and then you have Woody, who it's like, I mean, sure, the Sun Yi thing isn't illegal, but it's also obviously a little questionable in terms of tastes and everything. So it's such a muddied situation at this point that it's so complicated, and I don't even know what's going to happen when Woody Allen dies at this point. I don't know what people are going to do with his legacy 10 years after he dies.
It's so tough too, because Moses and Dylan, whatever happened with Woody Allen and with Mia Farrow and everything that happened then, they were kids, and it's just, if you try to remember anything from when you were that age, it's really, really hard. Once you have an idea, I know I've told stories that I was convinced were memories that happened to me when I was a little kid. I remember specifically one time I was telling a story about going to my late grandfather's house and him yelling at me for wearing a hat at the kitchen counter, and being really struck by it because it was this weird kind of racy comment that he made. And I would tell that story. And one time I told it in front of my sister, and she was like, that was me. That was not you. I was the one wearing the hat. And I was like, wait, what? And it was not me trying to steal her story. I had genuinely over time convinced myself that it happened to me because I was there when it happened. I think the moment just kind of shook me and stuck with me, And over time of telling that story, it became me wearing the hat and my grandfather yelling at me about it, And it's just memory is just so fluid and weird, especially when you're brain is developing that fast, and you're being inundated with all this information when you're that young. And it's just, I don't know, we'll never, unless Woody Allen comes out and talks about it and I guess changes his story or not, but we're never really going to know what happened.
Yeah, like speaking of memory, like one of the points that Moses Farrow makes in the article is that one of the cruxes of Dylan's story is that they went up to the attic and played with this giant toy set, and he as a young boy, now woman, he transitioned. But so the thing about that Moses was saying was that during the incident, Dylan claims that he was laying on his stomach as a little boy when Dylan came in and touched him, or I'm sorry, when Woody came in and touched him, and he was playing on his stomach, laying on the floor of the attic, playing with this giant toy set. And Moses' point, and Moses is the older brother, and Moses is saying the thing about that house is that he's talking about is the attic was disgusting. No one went up in the attic. There was nothing up there. There was no toys. No one ever went up there. It was nothing but spider webs and disgusting things. We never had a giant toy set. Like there's no toy, like there's no train. He starts going on about all these details about the house and how like it would have been impossible to go up into the attic at that point. Like that's just not, it wasn't an easy access to get to the attic, and like it makes no sense that's where they would go. And like little things like that where you're just like, well, whose memory is correct here? Like I don't want to call anyone a liar, and I don't want to take sides. So I guess I just kind of need to sit back and, wait for the fucking waste to clear or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my siblings could legit tell me anything about our childhood, and I would just have to believe them because my memory is garbage. I just don't remember things. Yeah. So I don't know.
So, all right, well, before I forget this fucking movie, because I've already forgotten some of it, if that spoils a little bit of our review, we got to get hurrying, buddy, because it's going to be a long episode, because we still have to dive in to Deadpool 2.
Doing the right thing is messy. But if you want to fight for what's right, sometimes you have to fight dirty. And that is why Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is pure pornography.
Oh, God, I wish I finished college.
It lives up to the hype, plus.
Fuck it, they probably won't even make it 3.
Yeah, why would they? Stop it, too. You killed it.
Ugh, that was a big fart from you. Ooh.
Deadpool 2, that's my review.
A stinker? You stinker? Coming from your butt?
You know what it is with Deadpool? It was fine.
That's my review. Deadpool 2 was totally fine.
I like the first one a lot more. You know what my problem with Deadpool was in this movie? Maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset to appreciate it, but I don't think so. He's that friend that just never has an off switch, and you can only deal with him so much. Like, oh, we're going to go hang out with Bill tonight. Bill's a lot of fun. And then by hour 3, you're like, Bill, you got to shut the fuck up and just chill. Like that's what Deadpool is. He's just so on all the time. And I just found it exhausting in this movie.
I saw that Deadpool 2 was Trolls for adults.
Because why?
I don't know. Just like something that like little kids would be excited about. And you're just like, oh, it's so fucking annoying that you like that. And then you like look at adults and they're all really excited to go see Deadpool 2, and you're like, really? You're that excited? He's fine, guys. He's fine.
It's also like he's not that fun. Like a lot of his humor it already feels kind of dated or something. All
right. Well, here's my thing with that. Because I think I understand that. My opinion of it is I enjoyed the first one for what it was. I think that's what it had going for it, was that it was new, it was fresh, it was the first one. So, story things aside, because the first one's loose as fuck. It's barely a movie, like, if you rewatch it. Like, I think the first 15 minutes of the movie is taking place on the bridge, the opening fight scene. It's just flashing back constantly, and it just goes back to that bridge for, like, the first hour of the movie. The movie's a total mess, but it coasts by on laughs and some fun character beats and the fourth wall meta stuff. And Ryan Reynolds is, he's a charismatic actor. Like, that's all going for it. This time through, it's going through a lot of the same motions as the first one, but it just like, you're like, oh, I've seen this before, and it's not doing enough new to change, to like convince me to be excited again. So it just feels like a retread, and it's really boring.
Yeah. Comedy sequels are really hard to pull off, I think. There aren't a lot of examples of comedy sequels working out incredibly well, and I think it's because once you hit that first movie, and like you said, the the humor is fresh and exciting. When you run it back, it just feels really trite and obvious and repetitive, and you just get bored of it, and like your leash is really, really short.
Is there a comedy sequel that's better than the original that you can think of? Ghostbusters 2, obviously.
Does Gremlins 2 count?
Yeah. That's a good.
That would be my vote.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, yeah.
But that's a good question. That's the thing. Like, this movie, superhero sequels happen all the time. Comedy sequels rarely do, and this is as much of a comedy as a superhero movie, maybe even more so. And when he's just undercutting every serious moment of action and violence with like quippy one-liners or breaking the fourth wall, I just got so fucking tired of it, man.
Well, how much of this? So, do you think this? Because we had the conversation about Infinity War last week, and we were talking about Marvel fatigue, and next week we're going to talk about Star Wars and Star Wars fatigue. So these are kind of interlinked, I think, because we have something like giant like The Last Jedi that we've been super excited for, and then you're getting this little side story with Solo that doesn't have as much to do with the major world. So you're like, oh, that's interesting. I like this world enough that I might check that out, but it's not going to like probably be as exciting of a thing for me. So like your expectations go down a little bit. Same with this one where you go to see Deadpool, but it's not, he's a side character. It's not, has nothing nearly as big at stake as the Infinity War does. So it's just kind of like after a giant meal. It's like going to McDonald's after you've eaten at a steakhouse or something like that. I don't know how to describe it.
I think part of it is fatigue, and honestly, I think for me is part of it, most of it, I just wasn't vibing with Deadpool. And if you can't appreciate his humor and the type of character that he is, the movie's just not going to work at all. Like, there's really nothing else the movie has going for it.
So did you like nothing about it? Because I laughed at some things. I laughed at...
I mean, sometimes he was funny, yeah.
Well, like, I liked X-Force. I liked the scene where they all died.
That's just a rip-off of MacGruber.
I see, like, I've seen bits and pieces of MacGruber. That's one of the big, blind spots in my life.
I mean, it was clever and it was funny and it was way more drawn out, but MacGruber already did that. Assemble the team and then they all die.
Oh, wow.
The whole time I was like, yeah, MacGruber, the greatest comedy of this decade, already did that shit.
I gotta watch MacGruber.
Plus, I don't want to spoil, but I will say one of the best parts of the movie is the post-credits scene.
Oh, okay. Well,
that actually really made me laugh.
Of Deadpool 2?
Yeah.
Or of MacGruber? Okay, Deadpool 2. I feel bad. People have described to me what happens. I was sitting there in the theater. I was like, there's probably some stupid post-credit scene. I feel like I don't. It was a protest stand. I was like, I'm not going to give in to Marvel.
But it's not the end of the credit. It happens like 30 seconds in.
I got up pretty quick. I was like, I'm out of here.
Because I was walking out and then it happened and I was standing. I was like kind of protesting as well, and I was standing in my seat. And then I realized, like, oh, this looks like it's going to last for a while. And I just kind of had to sit down because there were people sitting behind me. But it ended up being pretty funny.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. And I kind of, when I heard it described, it sounded funny. But whatever. Like I said, I don't care enough to be like, go back and see it again or something. Whatever. I'll see it on YouTube someday.
So what was your, I guess, spoiler for details, what part of the movie was the funniest for you?
Generally, I don't know. Like, Ryan Reynolds does not... I'm not a big fan of Ryan Reynolds. Like, I can acknowledge that I can acknowledge he's a charming guy. He seems very nice on Instagram, in interviews and stuff. Seems very nice. And I've been familiar with him since Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. He's been around forever. But if you go look at his IMDb, man, he's been in a buttload of shit. Like, just really awful choices, tons of really bad movies, and he's just never really done much for me in terms of being a leading man. So I can acknowledge that when I saw Deadpool, I was like, oh, this is the perfect match for him. He finally found a vehicle that works, like, where he's a good match. So I think he works as the character, but like you, the character itself is not my favorite. And the quippy one-liners, it's like Family Guy or one of those, like, we're just going to throw 1,000 jokes at you every minute, and, like, some of them aren't going to stick, but, surely one or two of these is going to make you chuckle because there's so many of them. So it's kind of that approach to movie making. But it's also, it didn't offend me on a personal level, but there's been a lot of writing about the killing off of Vanessa in the opening of the movie and the fridging of that character, to use comic book slang. I don't know if you're familiar with the backlash it's been getting for all that.
I have not. What's the backlash?
The backlash is basically here's Deadpool, which is this, something that's supposed to be deconstructing all these cliches about comic books. Like Deadpool's always addressing like, he'll turn to the audience and address like, oh, we're doing this little silly thing or we're making fun of comic books or comic book movies. But the opening of the movie is Vanessa, Deadpool's partner from the first movie. She gets gunned down and killed. And fridging is a term that comes from a Green Lantern comic book back in the late 90s, and a journalist wrote it because basically Green Lantern's girlfriend was killed in the early parts of the book, and it's a term that refers to female characters that are killed off solely for the male character to have a reason to like go kick ass. And so it was a complaint basically that started because people were saying like, wow, Vanessa was a great character to the first movie, and all you could do with her in this one was have her want a baby and then kill her off. And they were asking the writers about the movie about that. They're like, you address all these other cliches, like that's one of the most popular like things that have been overdone in storytelling. Like, why did you not care to address that? And their answer was basically like, oh, well, we didn't really think about that. Like, we just wanted to take everything away from Deadpool, and we knew we were going to bring her back at the end, so it doesn't really matter. And like, like we just, maybe that's our bad, but we just really weren't thinking about it. And, so their answer wasn't great because I think it was in an interview with Vulture. And so that kind of kickstarted a conversation about, these comic book bros, and because, what's her face? The ex-girl, the teenage girl who I'm blanking on her name because she's such a non-character in these movies. And
Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Yeah. Her, there's not very. I guess you have Domino in this one, but this movies just aren't.
Domino
very
was
good.
the highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah, she's pretty good, and like her power with luck, the way that's visualized is pretty inventive and cool.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that kind of is what the movie is. Like the only meta qualities the movie really has are the breaking of the fourth wall, but in terms of its actual story, it's really not doing anything unique at all, which is fine if you like you can mock those tropes and still you can send up tropes like that and still lovingly dive into them, like there's nothing wrong with that. I think Edgar Wright does that a lot with his movies where he plays on tropes like in Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but it's solely out of love. And the movies follow like a similar path, or like Behind the Mask does that with the slasher film in a really clever way. Deadpool 2 just isn't really clever.
All right, guys, do you hear that? That is the sound of fire and burning, because that is what happened to our recording. Tom and I were in the middle of a fascinating, incredible discussion of Deadpool 2 when suddenly the audio files were corrupted. On my end, this is all my fault. This is Phil. I am going to be wrapping up the show solo today because, well, my file screwed up, and through no fault of Tom's, the last 7-ish minutes or so of our conversation just completely vanished. It was a battery issue, if you must know. So, it's not that big a deal. I'm glad it happened in the last 7 minutes or so, not the whole episode. So thankfully, you heard most of the episode. We got all of our points out. We didn't like Deadpool 2. You might like it. I talked to a lot of people who seem to have enjoyed it, but I didn't, and that's the end of the episode anyway. So, we basically just didn't get our wrap-up and recommendations, which Tom, he recommended Barry Gifford's novel Wild at Heart, the story of Sailor and Lula, the novel that went on to become Wild at Heart, the David Lynch film. He had just read that and was recommending that. I, in honor of the death of Philip Roth, talked about how much his work had meant to me, how much his novels had meant to me growing up, and what a powerful voice he'd been in literature. So we wanted to honor him, and, unfortunately, we erased it. Or I erased it, or had never recorded it, whatever happened. So, unfortunately, that happened, but I'm glad you got to hear the rest of the episode. Anyway, that's the show for this week. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the show. Every one of those helps us out incredibly. Thank you to Zach Pitts for the theme music, and please find us on Twitter at BigFatBond, all one word, and you can find me at Phil Wiedenheft. Look for us there. Tom, I will not see you next week because you are not there, but I will talk to you. I'm just, reading from my usual prompt, and it says Tom, but he's not here. So I'm just talking to myself alone. This is what my life has become. Goodbye.